So here, just getting back to the Russiagate, you tweeted this out. So, Aaron, who is this? This was on Jeremy Scahill's Intercept podcast. Who is this woman that's going to be speaking?
Well, this clip is Betsy Reed, who's the editor-in-chief of The Intercept.
Oh, okay. So listen to this. This is nuts, right? So here, this is the editor-in-chief of The Intercept, and now you're going to find out why The Intercept's coverage of Russiagate sucked as bad as anybody's, right? And holy shit, listen to this. Is the editor. Oh, my God, listen to this.
And this idea of like a conspiracy, which, Mueller defined narrowly and set a very high bar for as a tacit or express agreement with the Russians. I really think what the picture you get reading the report is that the Trump campaign was not sufficiently competent to execute an agreement like that. Like, it's just complete mess. But there are a zillion connections with the Russians and attempts to kind of, work together in some loose way. So I think that there's plenty of evidence of a kind of soft, loose type of collusion in the report, but just not that, high level of conspiracy.
And now you know why people who go to journalist school are usually the worst journalists. And that's a perfect example. She's a horrible journalist. She doesn't know, she's not doing one due diligence thing about journalism. She's spreading, again, McCarthy Reds baiting bullshit that is evidence free. And she's the editor of of The Intercept. And so now you know why I don't have any respect for anybody in journalism except maybe Aaron. Is because they suck worse than I do. I'm fucking high when I get up in the morning, and I'll do a better job reporting Russiagate than The Intercept will any day of the week. Let me throw it to you, Aaron. Why'd you tweet that out?
Well, I'm not going to endorse your blanket
you shouldn't.
Characterization.
No. I'm a bomb thrower. I'm a loose cannon. I'm a loose cannon. That's not you. You're a real dude.
But on this issue, the reason I highlighted that clip is because it shows that even at a website that brands itself and is in many ways, in really serious, in really key ways, an actual adversarial website news outlet. When it comes to domestic issues, on foreign policy, I think The Intercept really has a lot of shortcomings. But on domestic policy, it is genuinely adversarial, and there's a lot of really good stuff. And of course, on Russiagate, they have as a columnist Glenn Greenwald, who led the pack. Although that's separate from their editorial decisions, which were shaped by this kind of mentality. This is delusional. This is what happens when you bought into a narrative, as Betsy Reed, the editor-in-chief of The Intercept, did, that Trump conspired with Russia, that even after the facts, the report comes out, and there's not even a contact between anybody actually acting on the Russian government's behalf and anybody acting on the Trump campaign's behalf, because there's nothing there and this whole thing was a scam. You don't have the intellectual honesty to say, yeah, this was a scam. And instead you rationalize it by saying that the report showed a zillion connections between Trump and Russia, and that there was a soft, loose form of collusion. Like, what does that even mean? So it's a joke, and it shows the extent to which this Kool-Aid, this Russiagate Kool-Aid, gripped the progressive left. It's the point where the editor-in-chief of a major outlet, an adversarial outlet, is drinking the Kool-Aid and saying stuff like this. And it shows the climate that we were in that made it difficult. If Bernie ever entertained the possibility of pushing back, the fact that progressive adversarial outlets were going along with it made it that much more difficult and made it that much easier for the neoliberals and their agenda to take hold, because you even had the media outlets that were supposed to be holding them to account and calling bullshit on this. You even had them saying moronic stuff like this.
So just to recap, my words, what you have there is the editor of a major news organization that pretends it's doing adversarial journalism, and what it's actually doing is running the biggest PR stunt for the establishment in the history of my life, which is Russiagate, and which took everybody's eye off the ball. And you're just doing the bidding. You could not be a bigger tool if you let the CIA run that fucking magazine and print their Russiagate articles. And then when you realize that everything you've done has actually been undermining of the country and the progressive movement and any kind of progress whatsoever, or holding the other party in power, that when you realize that, then you don't have the intellectual honesty, courage, or integrity to tell the truth even then. and you're the editor of The Intercept, you're no better than Glenn Beck. You're no better than Sean Hannity. You're no better than Alex Jones. You're a conspiracy theorist. But what's even worse about you is that people are skeptical of Alex Jones, but people actually trust The Intercept, and that's what's the problem. As they trust people like the editor of The Intercept when she's doing a full-blown 100% McCarthy red baiting, evidence-free conspiracy theories, and she knows it. That's why people don't trust the news, because the people who are the editors of our news magazines have zero integrity, and they reveal it every day. All right, so go. And I know you don't agree with any of that, so don't worry about it.
Well, no, I do. I'm just saying, like, what's more embarrassing? So, you know what? We got this one wrong. Glenn Greenwald was right, our columnist. The rest of us who pushed this, and The Intercept had James Risen writing constantly about how Mueller was that much closer to getting Trump on the... What's more embarrassing? So, you know, we were wrong. We got this wrong. Or saying that, yeah, actually, Mueller found this kind of soft, loose type of collusion. I mean, what's more embarrassing? You know, the lack of humility, the refusal to own the mistake was not just damaging to journalism and damaging to their reputation. It was damaging to the cause of defeating Trump, because it helped prevent an honest reckoning with how disastrous this whole thing was. And so by doing that, you emboldened the wing of the party that wants to defeat Bernie Sanders, because that's why they launched this whole thing, is because they couldn't compete with Sanders on real issues, and they needed something that could help curb the anti-establishment sentiment that won the election in 2016.
You know, it's just nuts to see people who it's like when you get on a plane, you want to think the pilot is a better person than you, that he wasn't up drinking last night like I was, and that he didn't puff in the morning, and that he's actually got his shit together and he knows how to fly this plane. And then I somehow slide over from comedy into journalism, and I find out that all the pilots are fucking drunk, and they're all assholes. And then they all cover for each other, and they gaslight their fucking passengers. That's what journalism is in America. And that's why guys like you and Max and the people over at Gray Zone are rare, right? As you actually do journalism, and you actually do due diligence, and you actually don't report innuendo or rumor unless you make it clear this is just a rumor I've heard. You don't actually report rumor as a fact. And that's really rare, and that's why you're on the outsides of journalism today. You're never going to be welcomed into a newsroom, so you could show them how to do it. They don't want to fucking know how to do it right. They want to know how to make it look like they're doing it right, so they can continue to climb in their career and get a paycheck. That's what journalists are. Okay.
You know, Jim, let me say quickly, perfect example of this is what we're seeing right now with the OPCW, the Duma scandal. You were on this from the start when you had this allegation in April 2018 that the Syrian government carried out a chemical weapons attack in the town of Duma. You called bullshit on this immediately. I didn't say anything because I didn't go there. It was edgy. It was controversial. You called bullshit on this immediately. The Trump administration launches a airstrike on Syria based on this allegation. The media universally goes along with it, and you have outlets like The Intercept putting out articles advancing the Trump administration's narrative too. Okay, fast forward about a year later, and a leak comes out from inside the OPCW saying that a detailed engineering study had concluded that actually this chemical attack was staged, that the cylinders that supposedly carried the chemical weapon were manually placed on the ground, meaning they were not dropped from the sky, not by the Syrian government. And what do we have since then? We have a complete censorship of this story in the media, refusing to hear that first engineering report, and then refusing to hear another whistleblower when that whistleblower comes forward, and then another whistleblower. And then another whistleblower. So there's actually been 4 whistleblowers, yes, and we've reported on all of them at the Gray Zone. But meanwhile, websites like The Intercept, which advance the Trump administration's narrative, have refused to even acknowledge the whistleblower's existence. So there's no trace on their website of any story about the OPCW and Duma, the site of this alleged chemical attack, that even acknowledges the existence of these whistleblowers. that's not just so we don't just have a scandal at the OPCW of a cover-up, which, by the way, these whistleblowers say was done under U.S. pressure.
Right.
We also have a media scandal.
That's right.
Not just in the corporate media, but in progressive media as well. And I just called out my old home, Democracy Now!, where I worked for 10 years. Their only coverage of this was to basically do one segment whitewashing it with a supporter of the Syria proxy war. And since then, this is many months ago, since more and more revelations have come out, put up by WikiLeaks, Democracy Now! Has totally ignored it. So it's just an example of where journalism is at right now, where on the issues where we need people to be standing up and telling the truth, we have even our most noble sites, because these sites are historically very noble in many ways. Both Democracy Now! And the Intercept have done very noble things, being cowardly and going along and doing the Trump administration's bidding on the most serious issue, war and peace.
I am not noble, and yet I have more nobility than Democracy Now! Does when covering Syria. It's amazing. You got nothing on me. Jimmy Dore is kicking your ass, which is why I actually have more subscribers on YouTube than Democracy Now! Does. I have more viewers than Democracy Now! Just fucking think about that. And I started my show 5 minutes ago. They've been doing that show for about 80 years, I think. So I wanted to... that is just stunning. So let me just make the point too, Aaron, that when the Intercept doesn't cover the whistleblowers, and when Democracy Now! Doesn't cover them, and if they do, they cover it in a whitewash way, those aren't accidents. That is deliberate and intentional. So when you go to the Intercept for news about Syria, you just know that the Intercept is actively lying to you, who was trying to get informed about a topic. They are trying to mislead you actively. A news organization wants you to have the wrong idea on purpose about what's happening, and so does Democracy Now! Just so you know. So you can go watch those shows, you can go read their coverage of this stuff, and then you can come back here and you'll find out the truth. Because you're not going to get it from the Intercept, and you're not going to get it from Democracy Now! That's how easy it is to outdo fucking places like Democracy Now! And the Intercept. I could do it. That's how easy it is. It doesn't take intelligence. It takes courage and integrity. And so why do you think they're intentionally misleading the people at the Intercept and the Democracy Now! What would be, you don't have to give a theory if you don't want to, but if you do, I would love to hear it.
Well, there's a lot of pressure to conform to the establishment narrative. If you want to be accepted in mainstream culture, you have to conform. And, Max Blumenthal is someone who's written about this extensively. He has a great book called The Management of Savagery, where he talks about basically the Western public. And this is, this goes to every major war that the U.S. becomes involved in. But the Western public has been subjected to a huge influence operation to either deny the fact that the U.S. launched a huge covert program inside Syria, a proxy war inside Syria, to basically destroy it and cut off a key ally of Iran. And you've had, unfortunately, a lot of pressure on progressive websites and successful pressure to go along with it. And, in using all the familiar tactics of smearing someone of being a dictator apologist or a dictator lover if they question the narrative. And we see this every single time. The same thing happened when you opposed the Iraq War. Unfortunately, whereas the Iraq War was opposed by progressive outlets like Democracy Now!, which actually led the way, really, in media on pushing back on the Iraq War lies, now you're seeing them enrolled in pushing the lies used to justify war on places like Syria. And, I could speculate on the reasons. I just like to think that my most charitable interpretation is that people are just credulous and not thinking enough, and they're being intimidated by fear of being smeared. And this is why I do what I do. Is I want them to change. I want them to remember who they are and what they're about. Same thing with the Intercept, which is basically founded on the leaks from Edward Snowden, a whistleblower. And the Intercept has always prided itself on championing whistleblowers. Like, that's what they do. Well, where are they in relation to these now 4 whistleblowers here, but the two main ones, the actual inspectors who were involved in the Duma investigation? Why are they silent now on these whistleblowers? And by the way, when whistleblowers come forward and even adversarial outlets are silent on them, you're actually putting them in danger. There's a long history of whistleblowers being bullied, and what saves them is when there's light on the abuses that they're blowing the whistle on. And when the media ignores their stories and their plight, it actually puts them in danger. And in the case of the OPCW, it's particularly serious because there's a long history of the U.S. bullying the OPCW and even threatening people. So, for example, Jose Bustani, who was the OPCW's first director general, there's a famous story, and you can find it in Democracy Now! Or in The Intercept, where back when the Bush administration was going to war on Iraq, Jose Bustani was the head of the OPCW, and he was trying to push for inspections and the OPCW's involvement. John Bolton, then serving under Bush, personally threatened Bustani and his family, saying, "We know where your kids live." And they successfully forced Bustani out. And that also successfully shut Bustani up for a while, although he's recently started to tell his story a little bit more. And you can go through case by case. So when the media, in the face of seeing whistleblowers being intimidated and whistleblowers being silenced, when the media goes along with it, it's especially whistleblowing advocates like DN and like The Intercept, it's harmful to these whistleblowers' safety. It's really shameful. I'm going to keep calling it out until they change. I'm hopeful that they will.
Yeah, it's again, it's such a horrible feeling to be involved in news and to have people who are supposed to be telling the truth. And you know, it's like when I first found out NPR was complete neoliberal claptrap garbage. It was like, I thought, well, if we don't have NPR, what do we have? You know, and now it's like, well, if we don't have democracy now on the Intercept, what do we have? We just got Gray Zone and Jimmy Dore, baby. That's all we got. Because I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. I tell everybody thanks for the lane. And I don't know if you've been watching how people have been reporting the stimulus vote debacle, what have you, but the progressive media is now running like a protection racket for the progressive politicians. Instead of pressuring them and exposing them and making them do better, they know they can count on them to lie for them, just like Sean Hannity lies for Donald Trump, which is really shocking to see. Hey, this is the part where I tell you where our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then I would tell you to go join our premium, but nobody has a fucking job. So why don't you just enjoy the video?